Was there a moment when you realised how cathartic music could be?
100%.
In our general life.
Yeah.
Cathartic. Does that mean you're tired?
That's lethargic.
Well,
Fucking hate music, you know.
Music makes me so tired, yeah, honestly.
I'd be like, well, last night when I was driving back at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I think the moment for me is when I first joined sixth form. I'd never done like popular music before. I was very like into musical theatre, and I actually joined the college thinking it was like a musical theatre school. Turns out it was pop music. And I went to my first like underground gig in this Liverpool venue, which is now closed, called the Magnet. And it was just like one of the people at sixth form's band, and watching for the first time like a band playing and just their own song, giving it welly, and how the audience felt like it. That was the moment I was like, right, I want to do this. Like, I want to do this. And then, you know, I got to play my first ever gig with Liv at college, and from there it was just like, you know, the band happened, and yeah, it's been upwards from there.
Oh, uphill. Go on, you go next.
Oh wow.
Take the man.
The man. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I was quite lucky, really, to have grown up with a lot of music surrounding me. You know, both my parents were very much into their music, and I suppose it was kind of ingrained in me from a very young age that, you know, no matter the emotion, there is always a song for it. But I kind of felt it myself. In fact, there was like my favourite song ever, and when I first found it, and it was like, oh my god, and like when it really makes you feel something and it like sort of hits that spot in you, it was kind of like, all right, okay, yeah, I get this.
There is no feeling like crying to that song, is it? Like,
No, honestly.
I even had a moment. I am literally 22 years old, and the other day I was listening to Liability by Lorde, like, oh my fucking god! It's just the way music like makes you feel like that. It's like nothing else, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Banger.
Go ahead, shall I go next? For me, it was when I saw Blink-182 at Reading in like 2015, I think it was, and Travis Barker did like a 20-minute drum solo, and I had like £500 saved up in my account from like working a £5 an hour job at a butcher's, and it was at that moment I was like, I finally know what I'm going to spend that money on, so I just ended up getting a drum kit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's it for me anyway.
I don't know if I've got a story to tell. I feel like I didn't really get emotionally attached to music until like, not recently, but I've played guitar for like 10 years, and I was just not really good at anything else. I was just doing that. So it just wasn't really another option than music. But I think like bands like Fleetwood Mac and stuff like really resonate with me, and that's like when I first started putting like emotion to music, was when I was listening to Stevie Nicks, really.
We love our girl Stevie.
Yeah, of course. I'll pass this superhero.
He's a bit of a legend, this guy. Bit of a legend.
Is this meant to be a superhero that I'm supposed to know, or am I too young? Or is it just
Booster
like a...
Gold, but I don't think anyone knows who Booster Gold is. That was the point, just funny to buy the cheapest, most obscure brand.
Booster Gold?
So funny.
Was he
Booster
from
Gold.
like a cartoon in the...
Sounds like, you know,
in the
like
90s or
Booster
something?
chocolate
DC.
bars, like.
DC?
Oh,
Is
they're
it DC?
banging them.
Damn.
Oh, I love.
I'm trying to find the best position for him for the... I'll do him like on his knees, like a power slide.
Oh, okay.
Me on stage tonight.
There you go.
Yeah, you said something really cool there, that you realised that no matter what the emotion, there was a song that could channel that for you. What emotion do you feel like you're channeling most strongly with the last single that you put out?
Heartbreak.
It was.
Expensive driving lessons.
It was a hard. So this song was written when me and Liv first moved into our flat, and I feel like I was finally putting a part of my life behind me that I'd not necessarily been wallowing in, but every single song I'd been writing, it seemed to be about it, and I'd kind of made it in like a romantic way. And you know, me and the rest of my family all were going through heartbreak individually, and we very much like grouped together what was going on. Like my mum was going through a divorce, my sibling was like leaving a terrible relationship, and I was leaving a terrible relationship. And even though I knew how bad the relationship was, I was still like wallowing in it, and I was still like romanticizing the situation. And then I thought of this metaphor, well not metaphor, but you know people on like TikTok and introduce their song like, this is a song you can scream in your car. And I was like, ugh, and I was like, actually, I'm just so romanticizing that, like having a song to scream in the car when actually it's really shitty and feeling this, and it's really horrible having this feeling inside me, and that's kind of where I base the song on. I think it's kind of getting the emotions of heartbreak, a bit of anger, but then also like release and relief, which I feel like I hadn't channeled in a song until this song was written. And it was kind of that moment where I went, oh, okay, actually, maybe I'm not sad, maybe I'm angry, and maybe I know that I need to channel my way in someone else. And that's kind of where that song came from, and I hope clings on to people emotionally. But also to, you know, banger you can scream in your car.
What are you saying there, though, about the way that, you know, we all romanticise this pain to a certain extent? Why is it you think we do that as a culture?
I think it's to make it seem better than it is. I think with social media and everything, and TV shows like Skins that have been popularised recently, is like when people are going through bad things, you have no choice but to kind of romanticise it, and like things like drugs and sadness, heartbreak, and all those things. You kind of try and make yourself seem like your best self, and even when you're heartbreak, you like make a meme of it, or you are like, well, he sucks anyway, or they suck anyway. And when in reality, sometimes it's okay to feel shit. Like it's a natural human feeling, and wallowing in it sometimes can help, sometimes it can't. And I guess everyone's different, but you're not exactly what you are on your last post on Instagram either, do you know what I mean?
We all romanticise stuff though.
100%.
Yeah, I think it's just
I
like
love like going in my car and screaming like ABBA forever. Like I do that every single day. It's just singing in the car.
But how else are you supposed to go from place to place without romanticising? Otherwise, you're just on the M6 being like, go on, I'm on the M6.
Yeah, and it's like when summer comes around, it's like you long for it, and then when it's in summer, you long for Christmas. It's just everyone does stuff like that, and it's obviously some depth to other things, but
Yeah, it makes shit easier.
I think it's just like film and TV culture in general as well, just like romance. I think everyone likes to think they're a main character in their own story, which they are.
I think as well, like the idea like of like detaching from, like you were saying, from like whatever emotion that you're feeling, particularly if it's like sort of a negative one and it's particularly painful. I think it just kind of, it lets you sort of step away from that as a sort of, not like a survival technique, but almost as a way to self-soothe, but you're not really facing it, you're just kind of turning your back to it for a moment. But I think that's just how, like, particularly, you know, like the guys have said, like with social media and like film and stuff like that, I think that's just kind of how we've sort of like subconsciously learned to deal with things, because it's like, oh well, if I make a fantasy about it, if I try and step away from it, then it's easier for me to cope with this, rather than kind of go, no, this is what I'm going through, and like processing it that way. It's
like taking a step back from your ego and like
Yeah.
being able to point out what you're doing wrong and what you're doing right by taking a step back from yourself.
Like, how else are you supposed to fall asleep without that story that you replay, and then sometimes it goes too fast, so you have to go back and think of that little bit again, you know?
Yeah.
Like, romanticising, it's got some great positives, but definitely culture's kind of damned it
negatives
also.
as well.
Yeah.
Has being musicians and being in a band and being creative with your writing as a group, has that changed the amount that you feel like you romanticise things in your life in any way?
Yeah, I think, like,
you kind of have to.
You kind of have to, and I think one thing that I've noticed, especially being in a band and like upcoming artist culture, is how much the lack of sleep, the drugs, the alcohol, the sex, the rock and roll gets romanticised. I'm not into it personally. I think you can do whatever you want with your thing, but I think the culture does get romanticised.
Really. We rather just like make sure we get a full night's sleep before we play tomorrow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you are absolutely allowed to go, because, you know, it's your life, go live it. But I think romanticising that to young kids who are then getting into music just for like the drugs and everything like that, it's a scary thing to not outline how the negatives can, like, because it's what stops a lot of amazing upcoming musicians.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, as well.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like, enjoy yourself how you want to, but at the same time,
Set your
you see,
feet and
yeah, you also see like a lot of artists who are coming up who, like you say, they play like a gig and they just get drunk and high, and then they think that's enough for them. And it's like, fair enough if it is, but you could be so much more if you weren't doing it.
Yeah.
You're tricking your brain into getting the rewards that it's not necessarily attaining through your career.
But also do what you want, like.
But I think, like, on the flip side, it also, like, with where we are now, I think, like, personally, it's helped me to not romanticize things as much. Like, you know, some of the things that we talk about and write about are kind of very emotionally draining things that happen to us, and sort of being just the raw honesty that comes out when we write songs, I think that's kind of very therapeutic. And like we were saying before about, you know, romanticizing things in order to be able to detach from what's happening, I think we're quite fortunate in a sense of we're very honest and upfront about what we're going through, but we just talk about it in a slightly different way. You know, we write songs about it and we're a bit more sort of metaphorical with things. But I think it sort of helps us to kind of face that without it being too sort of stark to deal with.
I guess this whole sort of thing that we've been talking about with romanticising pain, or, you know, the sort of rock and roll archetypes that you were mentioning there, is very emblematic of Kurt Cobain, someone that I know that you're a fan of, who is the sort of classic example of this rock and roll story gone wrong. Mm-hmm. As fans of him, what's something you took from his songwriting? What's something you learned from the songwriting of Kurt Cobain?
I loved how he went from lyrically metaphors to brute honesty in his lyrics, and also that some of his lyrics didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to like note that sometimes it doesn't have to mean anything, but sometimes it can mean everything. I think that's a really important note. And I wouldn't say that he romanticised what he was going through at all. No. He'd go in his interviews and he'd straight up say, I'm not well. And he'd be like, I'm not well, I'm an addict. And he'd be very honest. And I think the media was scared of the honesty, and they were scared that he would question a lot of people and who didn't have feminist ideals and stuff at the time. And I think that's why I respect him so much. And what's sad is that he didn't get the help he needed, and I think that's the more takeaway. And we're very, very lucky to have an amazing support network of our friends and our family and our like tour support and our label that we have. It's fantastic. And I think a lot of people, again, romanticize Kurt and Courtney and things like that, rather than looking going, man, I wish they got help, because we could have missed out on so many amazing tracks there.
I think that was just media in the 90s as well, especially.
Oh, they loved it.
Like he was honest about his addiction, and then they were just like, oh, let's just spin that as problematic,
100%.
like rock star, basically. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.